Fala, capitão. Fala, galera. Muito bem-vindos aqui a mais um Gregario Tech, esse programa que vocês já estão acostumados. Eu, Nicolas Sessler, recebo diversos convidados e celebridades, assim a gente pode chamar, para discutir diversos temas aí com relação ao universo da bicicleta, o universo aí um pouco mais nerd, se é que a gente pode chamar assim, mas o universo da tecnologia, seja do treinamento, seja da alimentação, ou seja do material que a gente tanto gosta aqui são das bikes e da alta performance. O programa dessa semana, a gente vai tocar justamente no tema do material, no tema das rodas, mais especificamente. É um programa em inglês, então para você aí praticar e desenferrujar teu inglês nessa semana, eu recebo, foi uma honra, um amigo e uma pessoa que me ajuda muito na hora de regular meu equipamento e ajustar meu material, Luke Humprhreys, ele que é um wheelbuilder artesanal, se é que a gente pode chamar assim, na Inglaterra. Ele já trabalhou com diversos ciclistas profissionais, entre eles ciclistas da Sky, ciclistas da Bahrein, e diversos nomes. Ele tem aí como especialidade, ele constrói, vamos falar assim, rodas próprias, de uma maneira artesanal, tanto para o mountain bike como para a estrada, mas ele também recebe na loja, ele vai contar um pouco para nós da experiência dele ao receber rodas, né, de diversos clientes, mas sobretudo também de diversos profissionais, que muitas vezes ele não pode comentar o nome desses profissionais por razões comerciais, mas ele recebe aí diversos profissionais que enviam as rodas para ele, muitas vezes rodas de fábrica, com limitações de patrocínio, mas para que sejam tunadas, se é que a gente pode usar esse termo, para que sejam modificadas e ajustadas segundo o estilo do atleta. Vamos pensar, um ciclista de clássica precisa de uma roda extremamente rígida e responsiva, um escolador, talvez um ajuste diferente, e ele vai compartilhar então conosco um pouco dessa experiência do como funciona, né, o processo de montagem de uma roda artesanal e como uma roda de fábrica se diferencia e como ela pode ser talvez melhorada ou ajustada de acordo com o teu estilo de pedal e de acordo com o que você busca, né? Seja alta performance, seja conforto, seja durabilidade e tudo mais. Dito isso, vamos passar agora para o outro lado do Atlântico, vamos para a Inglaterra e para o inglês. Luke, it's a pleasure to have you here with us on the Gregario podcast. I've done a quick introduction about yourself, about the job you do in Portuguese, so that people can get to know you better. But I guess that there's no one better than yourself to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Nico. I'm Luke Humprhreys, owner and wheelbuilder at Pacenti Cycle Design. And I've been here at Pacenti for a number of years now. Since purchasing the company, we've been really focused on developing and understanding better the principles of wheel building. So we're quite different as a company because we hand build all of our wheels in the relevant market, whether it's here in the UK or over in the USA, where we build for North and South America markets. It's really important to us to hands-on understand our product.
Yeah, that's something that is quite unique, right, Luke? Because in the end, it differentiates a lot from an industrial wheel, from a big company. We can say the Visions, the Zips, the Shimano's, or whatever brand you ride, because in the end, they cannot have the same end quality and the same end touch that you have, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think we never claim to be unique in that space, because if you look at what Chris King are doing at the moment, their American production, I think it's incredible. Really have a lot of time for someone like Chris, who's got the right ethos around his products and his route to market, and they very much curate the product the way they want to. They're not following the trends of the market or being catered to by anyone else. They cut their own path. I think it's really interesting when I met Chris King a few years ago, and he told me that they use vegetable oil to run all their machinery, and it's good for their employees, especially respiratory problems. If you run machines for many years, and you work with chemical oils, it can be quite damaging. And also they're able to recycle and reclaim a lot of the waste, which is also a big positive. I think being in California, they have different standards as well, but I think they're actually certainly a company to admire, setting a precedent in the way they operate. So.
Yeah, that's quite unique. I didn't know this curiosity about Chris King. They are very famous for their hubs, right? They've developed some special standards on that side. But talking especially the wheel industry nowadays, we
Yeah,
certainly know that basically most wheels are built in Asia, right? Via Taiwan or etc. And I guess that they come factory built there. How is this? How are we looking at this scenario nowadays?
yeah. So I think there's two ways to build wheels. You build by hand or you build by machine. A lot of people say hand finished. Um, a wheel ultimately is a combination of the hubs, the spoke, and the rim. And you can take all of those ingredients and you can make a good wheel and you can make a bad wheel. So there are some incredibly good machine built wheels in the marketplace that have a purpose. So there are very good wheels for $500. There are very good wheels for $5,000, but there are also very bad wheels for both ends of the spectrum. So it doesn't matter how many dollars you put on a wheel. It doesn't matter how it's built, whether it's built by machine or whether it's built by hand. The principles are very much the same. It's whether it's good or bad is dictated to by how it's put together, how it's spec'd, how it's structured, how it's built, and how it's finished. And I think finishing is the big part that is often missing in the process. So it doesn't mean the machine built wheel was a bad wheel when it came out of the factory, but it might not have been finished properly. And we can talk about some of those elements in a second around why finishing is so important and where modern wheels are changing, especially with tubeless, especially with different tire widths. We first understand what's happening within the wheel structure. So, like I say, we're very lucky. We get a lot of other wheels come through our workshop for a service and repair. So we're able to study. And I think by studying as much data as possible, we can produce the best possible outcomes, whether it's our product or someone else's product, in the way we build it, in the way we tension it, in the way we look after it. So, we can build a wheel and it can be finished in the jig and you can put a tire on it. And it can go from being a good wheel to a bad wheel. Most people aren't aware in the marketplace around what we call the deflection of spoke tensions. So when we mount tires, especially with tighter tubeless rims and with bigger tire volume, we see a drop in the tension between 8% and 26% in our own rims. So between different models with different tire combinations. So we test all that data and we record that data, and that helps us find a better average. And when we have a good average, we can say, well, this is the best chance of this being a good wheel. But actually now more and more we finish our wheels with the tires on. So we take them to 95% finished. We mount the tires, we inflate them to the correct pressure, and then we finish the wheel, and then we have the best wheel we can possibly make.
Okay. And as out of curiosity, man, we can clearly notice from a few minutes that we speak to you the knowledge and the care that you take into building and what you do. Why did you decide to start the hand building process on first place?
We when I first got involved in Pacenti, I was coming from a long term background in the industry, both in sales and technical side. I saw an opportunity to work with a company, and the company was struggling, and they'd struggled on quality, and I felt that I could really look at why they were struggling on quality. We started to build wheels. We were just a rim company. We started to build wheels in Asia, like everybody else, and ultimately we weren't happy with the outcomes. They were good, but they weren't. We always we have an internal standard here. that we strive to hit our own benchmark, and our own benchmark is on quality. So we looked at what we were getting and we weren't satisfied. So we reset the bar and we decided no longer manufacture in factory, but to set our own workshops up in each marketplace that was appropriate, and to develop our own process of building wheels that was, by hand, was consistent and of a quality. And it took us a while because we made better wheels, I would say, than we were buying in day one. But we didn't make our best wheels in day one. It's been a journey of data. For me, when you ask me what a wheel builder does, a good wheel builder is somebody who can manage compromise, because there is no perfect wheel, because as the wheel builder, we cannot control all the parameters. The hub manufacturer and the frame manufacturer dictates the width between the dropout. And when the width between the dropout is controlled by 12 cogs, it's 13 now in some cases, the room we have to work with is getting narrower and narrower. So you may be aware of Cannondale AI, where they offset the frame and offset the wheel. As a wheel builder, this was the best thing in the world, because we were able to build the most evenly tensioned wheels, which had a phenomenal performance. But the industry and the world doesn't want bikes where you can't change wheels from one bike to the next. So this wasn't a long-term success for Cannondale. They've now come away from this model. But from just building the wheels perspective, it was the best possible scenario. So when you're a good wheel builder, you're managing a series of compromises. Currently, the worst compromise we have is in rim brake, because we're restricted to 130 millimeters between the dropout. And the balance of tension between one side and the other is the most extreme. And when you balance the most extreme tensions, you have the tightest window for error, and we see the highest failure rates. So one of the big things we decided, as a company purchasing Pacenti, they'd had a failure rate in the past with poor manufacturing of rims. So failure was something we were very aware of at the company. So I started to record every rim failure, and I still do. We have in our own rims. So if there is a crack in a rim, or if there is a failure because of crash damage, we actually record all the data, the spoke tension at the point of crash, the original data for the build. So we know a lot more about why rims fail. And when you know why something fails, then you can work backwards to prevent it from failing in future. So I will have many arguments with a lot of wheel builders why a wheel has failed, but ultimately I can usually prove by the data that I'm right. It's easy when you have the data. It doesn't lie. You don't have opinion in data. Data is, if your power output is 500 watts, the opinion can't be 550. It's the same with spoke.
Yeah, you have the number there. It shows you what you need to know. But to understand a good wheel, basically, what is you mentioned in the end, the wheel is compromise. But what are we looking at when we define a good wheel?
So a lot of people think you can control spoke tension for different riders. So can we make a wheel comfortable with spoke tension? Can we make a wheel compliant? Can we make a wheel stiffer and faster with spoke tension? Ultimately, I think the answer is no, because people think you can. We've done it once. We did it in downhill mountain biking. We ran low spoke tension, and the reason for that was to make the wheel handle in a different way. So we were actually cheating the wheel, but the durability was 1 or 2 runs of a downhill course. And most people aren't going to buy $1,000 wheel set for 1 or 2 runs of a downhill course. They would preferably like it to last 1 or 2 years or more in that environment as consumers. So, yeah, we can do something very special for 1 run on 1 day for somebody to win maybe a World Cup, but ultimately we can't really change the construction of a wheel through spoke tension. And when you work with steel spokes, like we use a lot of SAPIM, D-light spokes, CX-ray spokes, the wire tension, regardless of the spoke between 2 points, is the same. The way you measure it needs to be correct, and not all the parameters are the same. So we built our own testing equipment to really understand that process. But those points are very, very fixed, and we don't have a lot of control over the feeling in the wheel. If a wheel was to be compliant, it would break because it would squash, it would be an egg, and it wouldn't be able to perform. So then people say, oh, well, a really high tension wheel is going to be stiff and it's going to be fast. Well, actually, that's not really the case either. Some spokes, especially when you talk about bladed and round spokes or different types of spoke, can start to affect the wheel performance and patterns of spoke. You see people use a straight pull spoke on a disc brake. I personally don't agree with this. I think it's a recipe for disaster because you're putting unnatural forces against the spokes and you're not supporting the product properly. So, you know, it's that looking at how can we control a wheel. So we started to look at different spoke types, and when we use round spokes and bladed spokes, we see different levels of flex from side to side. So side to side or deflection tests show us that when you deliver power as a rider, a bladed or what some people think is an aero spoke. I don't call bladed spokes aero spokes because I think we can prove time and time again that aerodynamically they're not an advantage. But when you look at a bladed spoke versus a round spoke and you're losing performance because you're getting lateral movement that's necessary just because you have a different spoke, then this is a negative. So about eliminating negatives, looking for the positives. What can we do to improve the feel? So by recently working on our SLR program, we found a combination of parts that we can build into what we feel is the optimum wheel and give the rider lower fatigue value. So when we start to look at pro athletes and we build in a very different way, we can filter that down to our customers and they can have the same benefits. But when we work with a pro athlete, we can start to say, well, how do we deliver this rider to the finish line in the best condition? Can our wheel contribute to that process? And I think the answer is yes. With our SLR wheels, we're able to provide a lighter weight wheel, which has easier acceleration, deceleration, which puts less fatigue value to our rider. And by using the polymer light spoke from Bird, we're able to build in less vibration. Now, this isn't compliance. Don't for a minute think, because the spoke's made of flexible polymer material, that it has a compliance in the wheel. This is not sensible. We cannot keep a wheel round and have what we call a squashing compliance. It doesn't exist. Because once we put enough tension in one side and the other, the wheel will be rigid in its shape, or it wouldn't stay round. But what we lose is the vibrations. So by losing the vibration of the wheel, we're able to soften the feel of the road, gives less fatigue to our rider, which arrives at the finish in better condition. Then it's our job to keep the wheel laterally stiff, so it's fast when you're climbing and sprinting, and you're asking the wheel to perform. And the best way for us to achieve that performance is optimal spoke tension. Optimal spoke tension for the wheel will give it the longest life and the best performance.
That's curious, eh? And how it makes. But when you mention exactly the work with the pros and the knowledge you have, as I've introduced before, do different professionals have different needs when it comes for wheel type, wheel building, or spoke tension, as you mentioned?
Yeah. So
Let's
in the
think a
field,
climber
yeah.
or like a rider like a Geraint Thomas will have a different wheel than a Mark Cavendish. That's for sure, or should
So
have in theory, or
in
no.
theory,
This is
but not really, because what we should be looking at in terms of wheel balance is you've got a choice. You either have a wheel that's very specific to the day that you're riding, or you have a wheel that is specific to the need on the day, or you have a wheel that does everything. So if you're a professional cyclist and tomorrow you're riding a stage with a elevation profile of 3,000 meters, your wheel requirement will be very different to the day that you ride 1,000 meters. And then it depends on your objective. If your objective in the race is Mark Cavendish and it's the most important kilometer of the race is the last kilometer, we have to evaluate the wheel you would use to get you to the last kilometer with the least fatigue that will give you the most performance for that 1 kilometer. So you're looking at the same build process, the same spoke tension. You might differ the rim depth. Everything else should remain the same because a hub and a spoke won't change. The length will change for the rim value, but ultimately we're looking at the overall weight of the wheel set and we should be looking at the physics. So I have a dream to build a app where you can take parkour, the rider, and the objective, and you can produce which is the correct wheel for the day. Because the answer will always be different. Every day will be different. And the beauty of being a professional cyclist is that you have access to different depths of wheel for different conditions, or you're in a team where the budget is tight and you say, no, we're going to have one wheel, but it's going to be the ultimate all-rounder. And when we try and build for our consumers, we try and build the ultimate all-rounder. So we have a 46 millimeter deep rim. And people say, oh, why didn't you do 50? I want deep rims. They look good in my bike. And say, well, 46 millimeter in a disc rim for us was the perfect compromise for rolling, climbing, sprinting. It was a balance. It wasn't difficult in crosswinds. It wasn't so when we give one rim to rule them all, we went for 46 because it was
You see plenty of brands going towards that. Vision has released the new set of Metrons, which are wider and they go on 46 as well. I've noticed the new Shimano also was going towards the. They have the C50s and but I think the 40s are on 45, for example. It's something that we are seeing more and more towards brands going towards because it's like a little bit of this compromise, best of both worlds, right?
I think you're right. And I think, if you want to take a great example of who rides measured rim depth, Remco Evenepoel rides often on a shallower rim. And then you see photographs of his new bike with rainbow bands on after he won the race. They have deep rims. You're like, hang on a minute. He didn't win the World Championship on a deep rim. And then you think, why was that? Was it because it was, he was using a shallow rim for climbing, for acceleration, for aerodynamics? Because he spent, if you looked at his objective, he was in the breakaway on his own for a long time to win this race. So why was the balance of the rim shallower? Surely the deeper rim would be more aerodynamic when he was on his own. So often when I see Remco's best performances, he's not on the deep rims. And I find that really interesting because everybody thinks deeper is faster. And I disagree. I think there is a compromise and a balance to everything. And you can go too far in one direction as easily as you can go too far in another direction. So we're working with our SLL program to produce new depths of rim, shallower and deeper than our 46, so that we can optimize for the parkour for the rider on the day. But that has to be measured and has to be balanced.
Yeah, it is. Out of curiosity, for example, as for someone who's here listening, what can I expect when I go towards a deeper wheel versus a shallower wheel? Except aerodynamics, because the wheel they feel different. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Certainly, a deeper wheel it feels stiffer. The acceleration will be slower, but I don't know. I must say I quite like the feel of a deep wheel. It's like more driving a truck instead of driving a cart.
So if you think in terms of, if you use the time trial as a great example, the deeper the wheel becomes, the bigger the flywheel. So if you think in terms of the flywheel effect, The bigger the deeper the rim. When it's up to speed, it'll have a natural momentum, which sits beautifully. So the other factor that most people don't consider when they're buying wheels is what average speed do I normally ride at? So if you ride at a high average speed all the time, a deeper wheel will be more conducive to your riding, and you will benefit more from the flywheel. If you are a rider with a low average speed or a rider who is always climbing, then you may want a shallower wheel for faster accelerations and easier input, because you won't change much the descending, because terminal velocity is terminal velocity. It doesn't really change enough. Where it changes is when you're sitting in a big gear, averaging a high average speed on a rolling flat road. Then your deeper wheel is fantastic. Most riders make the mistake when you go to a
inertia maybe is a
criterium.
word that
Very
Brazilians will
important.
understand better, inertia than flywheel.
Inertia,
just to use.
The inertia, the point of inertia is really interesting as well, because what is the tipping point of inertia in the process? So if you took a criterium rider and you said, criterium rider, stiff wheel, deep wheel, wrong every time. The best criterium wheel is a shallower wheel, because you make hundreds and hundreds of accelerations and decelerations, and every single one of them adds fatigue to you as a rider. So if you want to win the criterium, you need the right balance of wheel for what you're doing.
And let's go mountain bike. It's very rare to see mountain bikes with high profile rims. Although when you even have, for example, I remember, for example, back in the time when Envy had the mountain bike wheels, and I always found them nice because they were a little bit higher than the others, even on the mountain bike. And you have like even the stickers, the logo, and you mentioned Cannondale. Remember when they had the cooperation with Envy, and they had those. I found them amazing. I found super nice. But in the end, nowadays we see very there are not that many high wheels on mountain bike nowadays. They're super shallow, actually.
Yeah, I think that the issue there is the big difference in the feeling on a mountain bike you would have had from a wheel like that would have been rigidity. So a stiffer rim would have given a nice feel, especially when you're pushing down the power and you're a stronger rider. So you start to feel the benefit of a stiffer rim, and then the build wouldn't have been much different, but because of the deeper rim, you would have had a little bit more stiffer feeling from the wheel. Then the trouble is, if we can put the same feeling in a shallower rim, it's better again, because we're with a mountain bike with all the tire volumes involved, we're not getting the benefit of aerodynamics. The rim cannot take the aerodynamic benefit because the tire is the widest point. So how do we then do the best mountain bike performance? We take the weight as low as possible and we maintain the strength. So we have some new prototype development for mountain bike cross country and enduro that can take the strength and weight to another level. So, and then we build in rigidity, nice stiff build quality with the correct tension, because tension will make a big difference to the rigidity. A lot of people struggle to manage the tensions required in a great wheel. A lot of people, when you build a wheel, you can build to a mid spoke tension easily. Anybody can keep the wheel straight and round, but balancing the tensions, the higher you go to the correct tension, in our opinion, once you find that correct tension, managing that balance becomes a little harder. You have to look at the wind up of your spokes. You have to look at how you stress and press your wheels. There are many, many more factors that become problems. And that brings me right back to the only way to understand how to build a really, really good wheel is to understand why it fails. So people break spokes in wheels. They either break them in the bend at the bottom, if they are J-bend, or they break them in the nipple. And usually there's two main reasons. There's lots of reasons. There's two main reasons that spokes fail in this way. They fail in the nipple usually because the spoke is too short. It hasn't got enough support from the threads, and it snaps in the nipple or it snaps around the rim space. Or when it breaks in the heel, it's often without enough tension. So there's movement in the spoke, which is causing, and some hubs are better than others. They're not tight in the hub, they're loose in the hub. You'll see more breakage in the elbow, the joint of the end of the spoke. So these are the two main reasons. And then rims fail mostly because low tension, because actually most rims in the marketplace, where carbon rims, aluminium rims, all have maximum tension of 125 kg or 120 kg, some 130. They're within very, very close. They're within 10 kg. 10 kilograms of force is the difference between one and the other. So when you break that down, why do rims fail? Can you take a rim over tension? Yes, you can, but it's hard because often the spoke nipple will break or twist before you.
It's not capable of holding it.
It's not capable. So why do rims fail? More often than not, low tension is the failure. So I would say in our study, 94 to 95% of failures came from low spoke tension, not high. There is the exception.
Now I have one question. Obviously, we are mostly listening to you here from Brazil, and let's say the access to your work and the access to have a hand-built wheel, it's quite limited. I have a stock wheel from a good brand, maybe from Roval, maybe from MV, maybe from Shimano, maybe from Zip. Can I make it better?
Yeah, you can. You can rebuild. We rebuild many wheels of many brands, most of them you've mentioned. And there's very few wheels we can't improve or balance better. So, and this is just, sometimes it's spoke choice, sometimes it's spoke length. Correct spoke length is really critical.
Even from factory. Even coming factory, let's say.
A wheel. Yeah.
We are speaking top end wheels here. Right?
I have issue with some major brands in the industry who still insist on lacing a wheel with a straight spoke on a disc wheel on the disc side. You know, I disagree. This is not a good principle, and it doesn't build a good wheel. And we've seen the failures on television. We've seen them in reality. You know, we see them in the workshop. So I don't like wheels that have built-in failure, especially from major brands that are very expensive. This isn't fair to the end user ultimately, and it's just wrong because of fashion, and it's not quality. So we can take any wheel, we can build it in the best principles, and it should be a great wheel. So if a wheel has not got the correct tension, has not got the optimal spokes, you know, we have taken major brand wheels and replaced the hubs because the hub has constant bearing issue or pre-hub issue or failure. And, you know, they're great rims, but they're not great wheels because the hub let the wheel down. You know, you can be a good chef. You can take the sugar, the flour, the eggs, and bake a crappy cake. You know, you can make the same ingredients. You can make a good cake. It tastes great. So, you know, we are in the same position with building wheels. They're just rims, hubs, and spokes. Some people ask me what the difference between the wheel I built is and this other wheel, and I usually say this is the difference. The difference is this, and these, and balance of compromise. If I can balance the compromises better than the next guy, I'll build a better wheel. That doesn't mean we're the only people who can build great wheels. There are many, many great wheel builders out there, but we know we can repeat our process again and again and again. So when we produce for a consumer, for a pro rider, we can repeat this process over and over and over. And by hitting our quality standards, by checking everything off, then we can make a product we are proud of. You know, we decided to be the company who has £3 million marketing budget and builds crappy wheels and probably have 10 years of successful business, or we could just keep building what we believe in, and eventually everybody will buy us, who bought a set will tell their friends and their friends and their friends how good the wheels were, and we will grow our business via quality and what we believe in. And we won't get it right 100% of the time, and that's why we have good warranty. We have after sales service, we have care package for up to 5 years. You own the wheel, we still do a discounted rebuild. If you damage a wheel you get subsidized replacement, because we're not here to make money from misfortune. We run our business based on our principles, and we build our wheels based on our principles. And I talk to a lot of small independent wheel builders who build with our rims, and we find by sharing information, we can all be better. Whereas when you hear a company say, "Oh, we've got this secret technology," that is often bullshit, in my opinion.
There's not that much. Good question. For example, I buy, or maybe from sponsorship restrictions, I get a certain wheel. As I said, we see all the top end teams. You buy a bike. Normally, you buy a nice Specialized to come with a nice pair of Rovos. You buy a Trek to come with nice Bontraggers. Should I get those wheels straight out of the box and have it sent to a good wheel builder like yourself or someone else to improve it, or just ride it?
So we talked earlier about the tension deflection of rims. So we have a tool for wheel building which tells you if the rim is in the middle. We call this the dish. The wheel is in dish. It is in the center of the bicycle. So I looked at a lot of bicycles in a lot of stores with the tool, and I could tell you that a large percentage of bicycles, the wheels aren't straight. And you will know as a rider, when the front wheel doesn't follow the back wheel, you might feel good around a left-hand corner, but the right-hand corner doesn't feel so good. So I would say the wheel could be perfect, but you should always check it. When you're building a bicycle from the box that came from the factory, I can tell you the wheels were built in one factory, the bike was assembled in another. And the guy who put the tires on the wheel did not likely check the wheel was correct. So we told you that the tension will go down by 8 to 26%. 8% can still make a good wheel a bad wheel. The tire is mounted. So when the tire is mounted, the wheel should be reset to the correct position. And I don't think this happens in 99 out of 100 wheel sets in the marketplace. So you know that the turn of the spoke key can be 1/4 or 1/2 away from being a good wheel and a bad wheel. So a good mechanic, a good technician, not just a wheel builder, should have all the information to make your wheel correct. The problem is that people who build the wheels, the big brands, they don't supply the information. So when you get the bike out of the box, it doesn't say what the tension should be in the spoke. So how do you know? Because the tension at 60 psi is different to the tension at 80 psi, let alone with the tire on or off. So we best balance and compromise wheels individually to the performance value. So we will take an average here of a 28mm tire. We'll take an average of, say, 80 psi, because that's the maximum they usually go to, which takes the tension to the lowest point, and we'll balance the wheel to this. And then it's as close as we can make to perfect when the end user gets it in the bike. But yeah, when you get your new wheels and your new bike and you put the tires on, you should have them finished, because they're not finished until they're finished. Some wheels change a little bit, some wheels change a lot. And this balance is really important. I had a set of wheels from one of the big brands that you mentioned earlier, and I'm not going to say the name because I don't think it's right to criticize people individually for what they build. But I rang the help center in the UK and I said, what is the tension of the spoke going to be with tire, without tire? and they told me about 5 kilograms difference, and the reality was 35 kilograms of difference. So they were 30 kilograms of tension wrong in their own understanding of their own product. And this is frightening because these wheels are, you know, $2,000 US. And they don't even, the guys who make them, who are responsible for them, don't really understand them. So my question to the wider industry is, why do you do bad practice, and why don't you supply people with the correct information to prevent warranty for starters? You know, these big brands, you break a rim, they give you another one. You break the product, they give you another one. It's factored into the pricing. From a minute it's free, they factor this into the original purchase price. But the failure rate is high, and they give away a lot of free product to replace it. But actually, we have less failure rate. And we live in a world where everything we manufacture has an impact on the planet. Why don't we just share information and bring this failure rate down, and then we have less waste?
That's a good point.
We can have a lower
It goes to the
price.
whole that is go to the whole industry and how the road is run now. But that's quite interesting. I must admit, look, I didn't know about, like, for example, until our conversation about, like, for example, the fact that even on a really that can be a really good wheel from top end brand, we should have it checked from the box and maybe retrued or fine tune to have a better feeling and a better end experience with the product. And I'm pretty sure that, like you said, 99.9% of the people listening to you right now also didn't know it. That's quite surprising.
Because it's very easy to market a principle of why you developed something, the way you built it, the way you structured it. It's very difficult to market the reality. People don't want to hear reality. They want to hear you can be faster, you can be stronger, you can be lighter, you can be all of these things. But also, we don't want to admit that you just can't get something out of the box and have all of those things immediately. That actually sometimes we require somebody with a skill or an expertise, to finish something. We don't, as an industry, my biggest frustration, we don't value the people from the bottom who build the bikes, who put the tires on, we're not valuing these people, we're not upskilling these people, and we're not delivering on those promises, because it's hard to find good bicycle mechanics. It's hard to find good bicycle shops. We struggle with wheel builders who have experience because they don't want to listen that it's changing. Sometimes we say here in the UK, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But the problem here is that when somebody has a process in their mind, to change the process is very hard. And it takes a very open mind and a very different way of thinking to get better. Just people say to me all the time, yeah, but we did this for 25 years. Why do we have to change? But you're not riding on a steel bicycle with Mavic rims and 32 spokes anymore. That was 25 years ago. We're not building wheels like we built them 5 years ago. We changed, we improved, we understood. And only by the same process with your cycling, by evaluating the process, can you get better. I know a rider who told me this year they learned to ride slowly in training and they got faster in racing because they learned to respect their body and train in the right way. And I think there's a different, these principles, the foundation principles are the same to apply to many things. People spend now, you will be seeing people in the peloton with bikes of a value of $18,000 to $20,000. Some of these frames now cost upwards of sort of $8,000 to $10,000 just for the frame set. If the front wheel doesn't follow the back wheel, what's the point? You know, you invest. You know, if the frame, we see frames that are straight and frames that aren't straight. The dropout is not in line with the forks. We've seen it from, you know, people say, oh, I can buy this bike from this factory, or I can buy it from eBay, and it's the same bike, or it's the same wheel set. Yeah, it might be made of carbon fiber. It might be a hub and a rim and a spoke that you recognize. But is it good? Is it going to last? You know, is it safe? Is it right? Is it, you know, people ask me, how can I make the wheels better? How can I make the wheels better? Can I upgrade the hubs? Will that make them faster? I have to say, honestly, no. Some hubs will roll a little faster than others. Very, very small marginal gains. Why don't you buy a really good set of tires and you put the correct tire pressure in the wheel? Then you'll be faster. And people say, is this true? Is this true? And we'll say, we'll test it. And we give somebody the correct tire pressure, and they come back and they say, hey, I'm so much faster on all my Strava on these new wheels with the correct tire pressure. You go, yeah, it's the wheels. But the truth is, 60-70% of it's the tire pressure. Yeah, we build a good wheel, but we can make a little bit of difference. You can make a lot of difference when you ride now as a professional cyclist. You don't ride 23 mil tires with 120 psi anymore, do you? You know, the world has changed.
That's long gone.
That's
long gone. I don't see myself anymore on 25 millimeter tires, to be honest. Especially on disc brake wheels. So that's yeah, there you have it. Look, it's really incredible. It's like you say. I told you before we would have a problem to keep the program under short, because the conversation can just go on. But I think the reality you say it's what it is. The role changes, and there is a continuous development, and sometimes. On a long, and it goes to the production scale. It's not saying that it's wrong. We cannot ask from a big industrial production standards to have the same final touch, human feeling and fine tuning details that will adjust to that one single person. That, as you said, is your hand, is your final touch, and is what can really deliver. It's quite curious, because in the end it's something that can help, and just by being aware of it, everybody can try to improve. And for example, maybe you listen to this program and you can bring your wheel to a good wheel builder to have a check, and you're going to have a nicer rider and a better performance at the end of the day.
I think you can really narrow that down when you go and talk to that wheel builder. Ask him a few questions. Ask him, are my wheels with the tires at the pressure I ride, are they straight and the correct tension? And then ask yourself, what is the correct pressure? Or ask a professional, what is the correct tire pressure? So if you want to go and feel better for longer tomorrow, those are the questions I think you should ask. Is the correct tire pressure, and are my wheels straight together in the same line? Simple.
Most program summed up in 30 seconds. That's super nice. Look, I must thank you a lot for sharing a little bit of your knowledge and experience with us. I'm sure that those who listen to us here will have enjoyed it a lot. I certainly did. I hope to have you on board more and more times. The doors, or the invitation to come to the Pelotón Gregario is always open, and maybe one day we can see you in Brazil, sharing a little bit of your knowledge with people there. I'm sure that everybody would like to get a little bit of this feeling.
Thank you, Nico, and obrigado.
Obrigado.
Until next time.
Muito bem. See you next time. I will jump back to Portuguese just to sum it up. Então, galera, para vocês que escutaram até o final, tá aí. Eu acho que realmente uma aula, um exemplo de conhecimento, de experiência, como o próprio Luke compartilhou conosco, né, de ter trabalhado com diversos produtos, diversas empresas, também com diversos atletas, né, Acho que sempre esse feeling de conectar o mundo dos profissionais ao mundo, e você que anda e treina e quer buscar a melhor performance no teu dia a dia, o melhor conforto, é algo único e que pouca gente tem. Então tá aí, mais um Gregário Tech para você, espero que você tenha curtido muito e até a próxima. Luke, that's a sum up. Once again, thank you very much for sharing a little bit of your knowledge with us, and see you soon, my friend.
Till next time. Thank you.